Hello, this is Rudy Giuliani, and welcome to America's Mayor Live from Washington, D.C.
Don't sound so excited.
A hotel I'm very familiar with. I must have broadcast from here 40 or 50 times during the 2020 election battle and into 2021. I broadcast my radio show here and my podcast, and sometimes was in here for over 24 hours in a row working on that stolen election, which has to be recorded correctly in history so it doesn't happen again. In any event, this weekend is a big weekend. As we will tell you later, it's going to be another so-called contrived weekend of rage in one of the craziest ones I've heard of, against Tesla automobiles. This is because of their anger at Elon Musk trying to save us money. These people are crazy, or they are paid to be crazy. I think it's probably the latter, but we'll cover that. This is also a weekend in which Donald Trump is trying to bring all of golf together. And unless you're a golfer, you probably don't appreciate it, but I am, so I do. And it's also a weekend in which the House of Representatives should meet tomorrow, and we will see if we have agreement between the Senate and the House on one bill. And in order to really pass it, they have to be in agreement, because in order to pass the Senate, unless it's a fiscal reconciliation bill, you need 60 votes. Well, you couldn't get 60 votes for Jesus being a good man. And what has to happen is they have to agree on exactly the same bill. And right now, there's some areas of disagreement. It is painful to me, having negotiated many, many things as a lawyer, a politician, a mayor. This is absolutely doable. They are within more than easy negotiation distance of each other. They both have to increase the debt limit in order to accomplish things like funding the military properly, like we want to do, and funding the immigration problem and the solving of it adequately, so that we can be spared some of the worst consequences of the invasion of America. And they also agree on certain cuts, not major ones, but good ones that can be done quickly, that start moving in the right direction. The big difference is the House wants to do two bills. Let's call it everything except the continuation of the Trump tax cuts, because they think that'll be too controversial. Everything means increasing the debt ceiling, funding the military properly, funding the anti-invasion efforts, reversing it, some other small funding matters, some reductions, most of which the Senate also agrees to, in some cases, slightly different numbers, but numbers that if you took the average between the two, they could all shake hands. Here's the problem. The Senate says you got to pass the tax bill too now, because if you don't pass the tax bill now, you're not going to have the leverage to pass it later, because there are a lot of things in that other group of bills that I just mentioned that 2 Democrats here and 3 Democrats there and 4 Democrats over here want. And therefore, you can get them for the whole bill that way. Whereas if you isolate it to the tax bill, they're going to nickel and dime you to death, and you may not get it. Now, when I say tax bill, please understand, it's a tax increase. Right now, you're not paying these taxes. It's going to be a gigantic tax increase if it doesn't happen, which would be truly much more jarring to our economy than anything going on right now with tariffs, which is momentary and has happened before and is going to probably turn out to be beneficial. The tax increase will be devastating. I am usually on the side of the House in most of these things as a Republican. In this case, I think the Senate has the best of it. I think the Senate is right. I think that maximum pressure should be utilized to get it all passed right now, because I don't know what they have in store for destroying our government. And this is the time to make the push. And I just think the Senate calculation that it could get done is correct. And the faster we get that tax thing done, the faster you're going to start seeing our economy really take off, like it did last time. Last time, the anticipation of it had to take off. This time, it probably is not going to have as big a impact because it's not new. The opposite, however, will have a gigantic impact. If it's taken away and you just think it's an extension that wasn't funded, and it turns out you have a 10, 15, 20% increase in the taxes you're paying, you're going to go nuts, right? And our economy will go nuts. So tomorrow is the day we find out how big a battle we have. When the House votes, we'll see how many votes apart they are. And by agreeing with the Senate, the House can make it possible to get it through the Senate. I know it's complicated, and the whole reconciliation thing and cloture and the 60 votes to prevent cloture is all kind of crazy, but it's there. A lot of laws, in the sense of procedural laws, don't make any sense. But you got to understand them. You got to be able to use them to your advantage. And that would be the advantage here. Also, over the weekend, we're going to have what I think it's pretty obvious now that both Russia and Ukraine are, it was described by an author in the Wall Street Journal as putting sticks in the wheels of Trump's ceasefire drive, playing for time. Now, we know why Putin is doing it. Putin's doing it to see if he can get the maximum amount of territory, maybe even more important, getting Ukraine the hell out of Russia, because probably if Zelensky did anything smart at all in this war, it was going into Kursk, 10 miles over the border, and taking Kursk in Russia and holding it against two major attempts to take it back. One of them with the help, or I would say the Ukrainians got the help of the North Korean soldiers, who started shooting each other and shooting the Russians thinking they were Ukrainians. Now, I'm exaggerating a bit, but it's pretty much like that. I mean, the Russian army was very unhappy about that move by Putin. So Putin keeps saying, I'm for peace, I'm for peace. Let me just get a little more territory and kill a few more people, which is what he's doing. On the other hand, it's like the way I see it, Putin was probably ready to make some kind of deal, having given up on the fact that he couldn't get Kursk, because he had tried really hard to get it. And Zelensky, decided he had to, I don't know what he did in the White House. I don't know exactly what that was, having a temper tantrum in the White House. I don't know if Zelensky thinks he really is important. We all know he's a slimy little crook. And Trump knows it for sure. He knows where he comes from. He knows who made him a multi-billionaire. He knows he's tied in with the biggest and crookedest oligarch in Ukraine. He knows that he hasn't done a damn thing to make his country an honest country serving the good of its people. And he knows that anybody tied in with those people is not a Ukrainian patriot, because they're sucking the blood of Ukrainian people. I mean, the oligarchs. And Zelensky is their creature, and he shows he has the same instincts they have by canceling the election, becoming the president for life, and imposing martial law. So Zelensky may fool the liberal press and stupid, silly, left-wing, lazy Western Europe, but he doesn't fool intelligent people. So he wouldn't agree at the beginning. So Putin said, I got a few more days. Let me take another shot at Kursk. And all of a sudden, he's successful. And then Zelensky said, we're going to have a war forever. Then Zelensky said, I've always been the one for peace, contradicting a statement he made 2 days earlier. And then Zelensky is then for peace, and Putin wants a few more days. Now Putin wants a few more days, and Zelensky wants to change the mineral agreement, which he's agreed to 3 times now. I bet Trump wishes he was back in the New York real estate business and dealing with them. I know the people in the New York real estate business. They're not nearly as squirmy as this. Gosh, this guy Zelensky. I mean, Putin is awful too. I mean, he's a killer. But Zelensky's one slimy little creature. But Trump, in his very, very special way, is roping them in and giving them enough rope to hang themselves. And he's beginning to apply the sanctions to Russia quietly, without making a big deal out of it. He doesn't. I don't think he wants to. At this point, he did what he had to do to Zelensky, and since then he's been very generous in what he's saying about Zelensky. I can't believe he really believes it. But looks to me like he's roping them both in, and he's going to get them there. And this weekend will be another step in that direction. But there's only so much you can accomplish with these slimy guys, because Trump's agenda, which is peace for the Ukrainian people, and the Russian people, surprisingly, is the last thing on the minds of these two guys. I think the good of their people isn't even in the equation. It's, how much money can I get? How much land can I get? How powerful can I be? Can I be the most powerful oligarch or the most powerful dictator? Victor Davis Hanson, who I think you all know from Fox and Newsmax, great professor from Stanford, I think has come up with what eventually will be the solution to this. There'll be an agreement, there'll be a trade on land. In other words, Russia will give back something, but not everything, and probably give back not a lot, but things of value that Ukraine wants. I think I know what we want out of this for Ukraine. And probably Ukraine should just listen to us, because I honestly think Trump has the best interest of the Ukrainian people in his heart a lot more than Zelensky, who's worried about the best interests of the oligarchs who made him a billionaire. And then I think Davis is Hansen is in fact correct that they'll have to set up a DMZ, a demilitarized zone, in between where Russian territory ends and Ukrainian territory begins, which is probably going to have to be done in the Middle East also. And this is the tragedy with this. The tragedy with this is the war should be over. There's no purpose of it for any longer. Ukraine is not throwing Russia out of Ukraine. That can't happen without seriously risking a world war. Russia is not going to gain much more of Ukraine without something that would also create a world war. If they brought in massive numbers of troops, the West would have to do something to help Ukraine. And I'm not even sure they do it. I mean, they've lost, people say a million soldiers. That's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous loss. It's only if you have a leader that doesn't give a damn about human life that you're going to lose that many people. So this is going to get settled, and then Victor Davis Hansen is right. It's going to end with a DMZ. So let's get there, huh? With all this going on, we're losing track of the fact that South Korea could be going in the wrong direction. We know, I guess most of us know that their president, and we had a terrible reaction to it, their president declared martial law. Now, we had a terrible reaction to it, but we didn't pay attention to the fact that their president, who may have overdone it, is very worried that the Chinese communists are taking over South Korea, and that the left-wing party that is trying to get him out of office is a puppet of Red China. He didn't know that, right? Because nobody reports that. And he's now been removed from office, and they're going to have an election in 60 days. And should the left-wing party win, it is not certain, but there are a lot of indications that the Chinese communists are going to have maybe an ally in our ally, South Korea. And this guy, although he overreacted and overdid it with this martial law thing for a day, was a stern opponent of that. He becomes the second Korean president to be removed from office, which is a lot for a country that's pretty much a new country. Yoon Suk Yeol has now been thrown out of office, and again there'll be an election, and the very, very left-wing government is scheduled to win, and it has been a plaything of Xi Jinping for a long, long time. Only thing that we can say is they have pledged that they're going to keep up their weapons launches and stands ready to carry out a nuclear test or even a nuclear attack on short notice, which means against China. Now, is that going to stick? I don't know. Seoul is the home of the largest United States overseas base, which means it's there to protect the freedom of the South Korean people against the insane dictatorship of North Korea, but most importantly against Red China, which is a country that's killed more of its own people than any country on earth. Vice President Vance, they put out an article saying he's eyeing the presidential run in 28. If he wasn't, he'd be the only vice president in history who wasn't. So I don't know what kind of news that is. The main thing is he's doing a heck of a good job. So that's good, because he probably has the best. The vice president is usually the one, unless the person can't speak English, like Kamala Harris, or can't put two thoughts together that are rational. They usually have the best chance of being president, and he's been a very, very good vice president. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to have with us an expert on Iran and where we stand with Iran, and when the heck are we going to take out those nuclear, all those nuclear reactors? We'll be right back. U.S. Army Major Scott Smiley paid a high price serving our nation. Scott was leading his platoon in Iraq when a blast sent shrapnel through his eyes, leaving him blind and temporarily paralyzed. Scott would become the first blind active duty military officer before medically retiring years later. Thanks to friends like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Scott and his family a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. Show your support for America's heroes now. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers. Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep grain, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because we like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans. No Robusto, all Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster, and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee.
Are you ready for some action?
I'm ready for action.
Get the Elite TV plan only through the portal. 218 channels, and it's only $69.95 a month,
Wow.
including your free portal.
That's cheaper than everyone else.
Your favorite sports, movies, news,
Wow.
even daytime dramas. We're talking about ESPN, OAN, Newsmax,
Wow.
channels you can't get anymore in certain areas.
Compared to the competition, this is a way better deal.
Endless selection. Not to mention all the free music channels. There's over 700 premium and classic movies all ready to go.
Wow.
Plus, they got catch-up TV that allows you to go back and watch what you've missed or want to watch again. Cut your cable in half and get twice as much for free.
Way more channels for half the cost.
After the first year, the subscription then drops to $57.95 monthly,
Wow.
where you change or upgrade anytime. Go to QUXNow.com and get yours today. Use promo code RUDY.
U.S. Army Major Scott Smiley paid a high price serving our nation. Scott was leading his platoon in Iraq when a blast sent shrapnel through his eyes, leaving him blind and temporarily paralyzed. Scott would become the first blind active duty military officer before medically retiring years later. Thanks to friends like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Scott and his family a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. Show your support for America's heroes now. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers. Well, we're back, and this is America's Mayor Live. I have Ali Reza Shefsadadi with me, who is, as you know, a member of the NCRI, the National Council on Resistance in Iran, and also a longtime Iranian patriot, and a person who has taken the whole cause of the change of Iran from the religious dictatorship that it is now to a democratic alternative. Has really taken it to the point where I think we're close to getting there. But what needs to be done now with the president and the Ayatollah? You see this going back and forth on this idea of indirect talks, direct talks. As far as we can tell, finally, the Ayatollah has said he's willing to do direct talks. But I mean, that who knows? That could change by tomorrow, or it may have changed already. As far
Absolutely. You know, the strategy of the Iran regime, especially in the past few weeks, has been to basically drag and delay and buy time, because there is a clock, which is the UN sanctions, the snapback clock that is going to expire come October. All they need to do is just to drag this issue, so by October they can be still getting the world engulfed in talks, and with little things here and there, so that the snapback mechanism would not be activated in time. And of course, you have to act on it within the next few weeks, the most, in order to make that work. And that's what they're trying to do. And it's just throwing this idea of, indirect talks at the time that this regime actually in 2015 sat down directly with the United States. And then it was the Secretary of State, John Kerry, with his counterpart, Javad Zarif. They met in Vienna, in Geneva, for weeks, back and forth directly face to face and walking along the Geneva Lake and all of that, and eventually that nuclear deal came through. Now they're saying, the very fact that they're just throwing this out there and then going, it's already 2 weeks past since this whole idea came, and nothing is materialized, but they bought about 2 weeks in between.
Now, when you say
That's
they
their
bought,
strategy.
they bought. What are they buying it for? What?
Well,
what's-
they're buying it so that the U.S. and other allies would not activate the snapback mechanism at the UN that would bring back all of the UN Security Council resolutions, which were removed as a result of the nuclear deal. And that mechanism is going to expire in October, and there's not much time left. If they manage to run the clock, then they have won. That's one thing. Second, just this whole idea of indirect talks just gives them the ability to evade accountability,
Right.
because they can always say, well, this is not exactly what we said.
Right.
This is not what we meant. It lost its content through translation, through mediation and all of that. They're just playing games. And I think that's why it's so important, whether it's the United States or Europe, anybody, you don't allow the Iran regime to play games when it comes to the nuclear weapons program of the regime, because this program is absolutely crucial for the regime. They want to do anything possible to keep the nuclear weapons program, because it's a guarantee for their survival at the time that they are weakest ever, both in the region, but also inside the country.
Well, could America effectuate the snapback provision now if it wanted to?
They can.
Right
They
now,
can-
today?
Right today, they can. Of course, they're working with their European counterparts. This whole idea was brought up by the Secretary Rubio and many others. And that's why the regime knows that ability is there. And the European counterparts of the European allies of the United States are willing to do that. They're and that's why whether people throw the idea of talks direct with Iran, that has to have a time and also have a substance. Like, what are you going to talk about? Let's say that you sit at the negotiating table. I believe that the only thing you can actually talk about is that this is a timeline. This is what you're going to do. You're going to shut down all of those nuclear sites that really is meant for nothing but building the bomb.
Mhm.
And no excuses should be accepted. That's the only substance of the negotiations. Otherwise, you will get into these details that you go through the same path that the regime went in 2015. And remember, this regime is much weaker than they were in 2015, and they're much more desperate than they were at the time. And so a real shutting down the nuclear weapons program of the Iran regime is doable and is feasible.
Is there already some impact from the sanctions being enforced more vigorously in the last month or so?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the mere idea that old, the past 3-4 years of, concessions that the regime received is going to be gone by itself has had a big impact on them.
Right.
And that's why they feel so desperate. So you don't want to just, leave that in the air. You want to just continue going toward that direction. But experience has shown, Mayor, that, in dealing with this regime, you really need to speak with the language of force and steadfastness and firmness. That's the only language you understand. Second, you need to, hit at the Achilles heel of the regime, which is the organized opposition inside Iran, those who want to bring about change in Iran. There is a big movement for change, at least, gaining momentum since 2018. The possibility for change is real, is out there. There's organized opposition that is fighting for it. And what you want to do is just stand on the side of the people of Iran to bring down this regime. Because at the end of the day, to really resolve the nuclear threat or terrorism threat of the Iran regime or their missile program or export of this ideology of Islamic extremism has only one solution. It doesn't have 2 or 3 solutions, only one, and that's ending the rule of the mullahs in Iran. And of course, that's the responsibility of the people of Iran and the organized resistance. That's how it's going to happen. And that's the path that whether the United States or Europe, eventually have to agree to it and accept and recognize the right of the people to overthrow the regime.
Well, tonight you're having a gathering, right, of supporters. You spend your time in the United States and all over the world gathering support for not even the overthrow, but for the establishment of a government of law in Iran. And it seems to me you're the only organization that does that. I mean, there are other organizations, small ones, that do it, but you're the only one of any substance that does it. The only other alternative now, occasionally, is the absurdity of the Shah, of the Shah's ineffective son, Playboy. He wants to be the king now, and he wants to work with the Iranian guard, who, if I'm not mistaken, killed a lot of Americans.
And Iranians.
Oh, of course.
Yes, definitely. Well, Mayor.
I mean, just the Iranian people, after all these years, was 40 years now?
Yes.
40, being under
46 years.
Being under this religious dictatorship, are going to substitute for it the secular dictatorship that they threw out 46 years ago. Exactly. Except this guy sounds like he's a genetically inferior product of the family.
Absolutely. I mean,
is this a joke?
Well, it's
a sad joke.
Yeah, it's a sad joke, and it's a joke that actually helps the regime ruling in Iran, because what the Ayatollahs want to do is want to say, look at the alternative. The alternative is those who want to go back to the dictatorship of the Shah, and it's not going to happen. So the end result is to maintaining the rule of theocracy in Iran. It's not serious at all. I mean, look. You go to France and talk to. There are lots of princes in different villages of France who are thinking and are nostalgic about bringing back the Louis XVI, and that's
they're a dime a dozen.
They're a dime a dozen. And it's not a serious situation.
You have a party, you want to be important. You have a couple of princes and princesses and dukes and earls.
Yes, and they the only thing that people know about him is that his father was the king, and his grandfather was also a king, who actually both of them came to power through coup d'état.
Yeah, and
they were overthrown by a genuine revolution.
They also both had an enormously brutal, effective secret police.
Yes, absolutely.
Savak.
Yes, Savak was.
And they had a prison that was one of the worst in the world.
Yes, the
makes the one in El Salvador look like Mar-a-Lago.
The Evin prison, which is so notorious, as you said, was built under the Shah to put intellectuals. It's all for political prisoners, to put intellectuals in jail. And ironically, at the time, the Shah was putting intellectuals in jail, but at the same time was in full collaboration with the mosque, with the clergy, because they were praising the Shah. And it was a very convenient relationship that was built between the Shah's dictatorship and the clergy.
Well, they really, if you think about it, because it happened so quickly after his demise, they developed their power under him. Because when he was thrown out, and the Ayatollah, the first Ayatollah, came back, the groundwork had already been laid, because the Ayatollah, although he said he was going to go off to Qom, and took over right away, right?
Exactly, because the whole network of the mosque,
years in the making.
It was they were working on it, and the network of the mosque was already there. It remained totally intact under the Shah. Not only that, was further empowered by them, but the real people who were involved in the revolution had received a tremendous backlash from the Shah. The leaders were killed or jailed. Intellectuals were not tolerated by them. So when the revolution came and was it was clear that it's going to the right direction, Khomeini, the first Ayatollah, Ruhollah Khomeini, was actually based in Iraq, in Najaf, until about 4 months before the revolution actually succeeded. So in October 78, he left Iraq and went to Paris. And by February 79, he stole the leadership of a revolution, which he had nothing to do with it. And that's how I think the Shah was responsible for usurping the leadership of a genuine revolution. And I think now, after 46 years, the people of Iran have had the experience of the Shah, that they overthrew it once, and they have seen the theocracy. That's why one of the main chants in the streets during the protest was that death to the oppressor, be it the Shah or the supreme leader.
Yes, yes.
Rejecting both forms of dictatorship, only looking for democracy and a republic form of government where the vote of the people would count. And you mentioned about the NCRI and the main organization
And the
within the
MEK?
NCRI inside Iran, MEK. This is the movement that Tehran cares about. Okay, they have been the #1 target of the killings inside Iran. There was a fatwa, a religious decree issued by Khomeini himself when he was alive in 1988, saying that anyone who's in any way associated with the MEK must be killed. And they massacred thousands, as many as 30,000, vast majority of them belonging to this movement. And then they became the target of the terrorism of the regime, and going after them, and also huge demonization campaign, spending billions of dollars describing this movement as terror cult and all of these things, all of it with the intention of really trying to isolate the movement and keep the regime in power. In the Friday prayers in Iran since day one, there are 3 slogans being chanted by the mullahs: death to America, death to Israel, death to the MEK. That tells you the story, that the fear of the regime when it comes to the external threat, where it is, and when it comes to the internal threat, that's what's happening right now. The biggest punishment for any Iranian is to find any kind of association that they have with this movement, the MEK, because they're calling for the overthrow of the regime. They're undermining the ideology of Islamic fundamentalism. They're telling the Iranian people, you can have any religion you want to have.
Well,
But it's not a mandatory religion that the mullahs have created. It's fascism under the cover of religion.
Well, I do believe that before we get even to the middle of the year, we're going to have a major breakthrough here.
All of the indications are there.
I can see President Trump's patience wearing very thin.
Exactly. The people
We'll see
of
it
Iran's
tonight at the
patience
dinner.
have already worn, thin, and things are stepping up.
He's going to feed me tonight. We can have we're going to have
It's gonna be good.
we can have Iranian food, Ted.
Woo.
How much do we love Iranian food?
It might be our favorite.
Yeah.
Outside of Italian.
Well, he's sort of
American Italian.
Yeah. This is really, really, really a great organization. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Mayor.
you very
Appreciate
much.
that.
Thank you. U.S. Army Major Scott Smiley paid a high price serving our nation. Scott was leading his platoon in Iraq when a blast sent shrapnel through his eyes, leaving him blind and temporarily paralyzed. Scott would become the first blind active duty military officer before medically retiring years later. Thanks to friends like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Scott and his family a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. Show your support for America's heroes now. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers.
Are you ready for some action?
I'm ready for action.
Get the Elite TV plan only through the portal. 218 channels, and it's only $69.95 a month,
Wow.
including your free portal.
That's cheaper than everyone else.
Your favorite sports, movies, news,
Wow.
even daytime dramas. We're talking about ESPN, OAN, Newsmax,
Wow.
channels you can't get anymore in certain areas.
Compared to the competition, this is a way better deal.
Endless selection. Not to mention all the free music channels. There's over 700 premium and classic movies all ready to go.
Wow.
Plus, they got catch-up TV that allows you to go back and watch what you've missed or want to watch again. Cut your cable in half and get twice as much for free.
Way more channels for half the cost.
After the first year, the subscription then drops to $57.95 monthly,
Wow.
where you change or upgrade anytime. Go to QUXNow.com and get yours today. Use promo code RUDY. Act fast.
Welcome back to America's Mayor Live, and we've talked about these tariffs, and we've seen how the market has overreacted to them in a negative way. A lot of people have reacted to it in a very, very positive way. But I think one of the biggest developments of all is the positive way in which Vietnam, which remember we were at war with, right? But let's remember we were also at war with Japan. We were also at war with Italy. We were also at war with Germany. And although Germany is a bit of a problem right now, it still is a good friend of the United States. And we couldn't have better friends than Italy and Japan. And Vietnam's history with China has always been one of a lot of friction. So I'm going to have Allison Wynn, who's been on this show, many times, and is an expert on finance, but also on Vietnam from whence she comes. What happened with the tariff that was going to be imposed on Vietnam was going to be like 40 or 50%, right?
It's 46%, Mayor.
Right, that's what I thought. So what happened?
Yes, so President Trump has made it very clear with his tariff strategy. He's bringing people to the table, countries to the table. For so long, countries like Vietnam has a 90% tariff on American goods. Thus, they're able to create a $120 billion trade surplus on the back of Americans. And my parents are from Vietnam. I love the Vietnamese people and the Vietnamese culture, but that's not fair and equitable. And that's basically what President Trump has been saying all along. I just reread The Art of the Deal. President Trump is negotiating on behalf of hardworking Americans, really from a position of strength. Get people to the table, have some skin in the game. There's no skin in the game when they're doing 90% tariffs on us, and we literally have a 2% tariff on these countries. He's giving leverage back to the American people, and I always bet on the American people, and twice on Sundays. So we really need to get skin in the game from these countries.
So now, what will according to the negotiations, how will the tariffs be set now?
So good news. President, General Secretary, which is the equivalent of president in Vietnam, Tam Lo, was able to call the president. He had been trying to reach him for 2 months, and through back channels was able to reach him today. They were able to discuss, and very, very good development. The General Secretary stepped forward. He was the very first one to step forward and say, you know what, this isn't fair. Let's lower the tariffs. Let's work on a plan in the next few months to lower tariffs so both sides have zero tariffs. A real bilateral free trade, not the NAFTA that we know about, where we give away all our trade to Mexico, Canada, EU, and we don't get anything returned. We need to be very aggressive, the art of the deal, get people to have some skin in the game. This is about equality at the highest level, equal trading partners.
I am sure that Xi Jinping was not very happy about this, did it?
I did see that he
I think Red
raised the
China was not
tariff.
very happy about this.
Right. Yeah. That's why they were very retaliatory today, weren't they?
Yes, they did a retaliatory tariff of, I believe, 34% on top of additional tariffs on the US. I don't think that it's very productive. Retaliatory is, has a violent connotation to it. I do love the General Secretary of Vietnam. He's using bamboo diplomacy. That's what he's calling it. And he's a great example of that. Very hard and tough on the outside, but inside, it's flexible. You can steam it. It's actually edible and delicious with stir fry. Speaking of food, Iranian food. I don't know if you love Vietnamese food, Mayor, but I do. Yeah,
I do.
So bamboo is very hard, but it's also very flexible. It's firm, but yet delicious once you get from the outside exterior. So it's something that I think the other Asian countries, the Philippines, Thailand, Cambodia also as well, should look at, they should model their behavior on Vietnam. Vietnam was the first to move after Liberation Day. They are a model example of what a country should do in terms of negotiating with the United States. So I think that's a sharp contrast to the retaliatory, non-productive policies of mainland China and the CCP right now.
Well, thank you very, very much, Allison. That was a terrific summary. I hope we see you very soon, and we'll be in continued contact over this. Okay. Thank you.
Great to see you, Mayor.
Great to see you too. Well, I think Allison has made the point, and it's been made by several other countries, but most dramatically by Vietnam, that what this really should lead to is either no tariff or equal very low tariffs. And in fact, when you look at the way President Trump approached this, his reciprocal tariff in each case that he proposed is half their tariff on us. So this is hardly an aggressive action. This is an attempt, quite correctly, not overstate at all, to change the economy of the world from a globalist one world economy to something that is a lot more vital, to a true capitalist free market, but fair market economy in which everybody can have a chance based on the products they produce, how good they are, how useful they are, and how we all can complement each other without tremendous economic burdens being created and distortions. So that, and I think you're going to find that a lot of the smaller countries, and Vietnam is not really a small country anymore, but compared to China, it is. A lot of the small countries are going to find this also Liberation Day for them. They are looking to strike out away from China. And I should have gone over that with Allison, but the reality is that this is also a geopolitical statement as well as an economic one. Vietnam wanting to be free of the yoke of China. You know, they both may be communist governments, but of more importance, one's Chinese and the other is Vietnamese. And we're talking about a friction that has a very, very long history to it, with the Chinese wanting to dominate them and they're wanting to be free and independent people. And that goes much deeper than anything else. Something we didn't really recognize because Americans, at least in the past, don't spend enough time learning the history and culture of other countries. If we had, the Vietnam War could have been very, very different. We may not have even had it. But Vietnam was there for separating from China. If we had, started thinking about it the way we thought about separating China from Russia. And I think that opportunity is there, and nobody better at that than President Trump and his team with Marco Rubio and his other national security people. You see on the map, you can see how close Vietnam is. That whole green area on the map is Vietnam, and you see the pink area, it should be red, of China. They're right up against China. Now, it is true that Laos and Burma also share a border with China. Thailand and Cambodia do not. But the main country there is Vietnam. And it's been a very, very difficult history between the two neighbors, as often is the case, and one being for a long time with regard to the other a bully, and that remains in the blood. That remains very much a part of who you are and what you are. The whole tariff situation is now beginning to create enormous opportunities that we're just not. We're looking very, very narrowly at, will a tariff increase the price of a pencil? We are not looking at the $7 trillion that has just come into the United States to create hundreds of thousands of jobs that we haven't had in a very, very long time. We're not looking at the national security benefit of the largest and most sophisticated chip manufacturer on earth, relocating a lot of its enterprise from Taiwan to the United States. Nor are we looking at how some of these are, yes, economically brilliant, but also absolutely necessary, 100% necessary for our ability to overcome the threat of China. And if you don't see the genius of that in what Trump is doing, you are not a very good observer of the world scene, blocked either by your prejudice with regard to Trump or other limitations. That's going to continue. It's going to get more complicated, and it's going to get even better. So there's going to be a big weekend. We are at decision weekend on Iran and on Ukraine. I think Iran will await the arrival of the second aircraft carrier, which is now moving from Asia to the Middle East, which will give us two massive military fleets right outside of Iran. So should there be an attempt to take out the nuclear facilities, we'll be in a perfect position to defend our facilities and Asia, and Israel. The delivery of the B-52s is an indication that we have in place the equipment that we need to take out their deeply embedded nuclear arms. The sending of the additional troops there to almost double our presence is telling us that we're going to be very careful about it. And the president's patience with them is admirable. But it may be a case of his giving them enough rope to hang themselves. Now, on the other side, he's got two that are delaying, Putin and Zelensky. And I think this weekend you're going to see a lot of pressure applied to both of them. And I also think you're going to start seeing, a lot quicker than you think, a lot of the benefits of these tariffs, Vietnam being a very dramatic one. But you're going to see a lot more falling in line, because actually lowering the tariffs, getting to zero tariffs, getting to free market for a lot of these poor countries could be a godsend. So you pay attention to that all weekend. Anything comes up, we'll be back on to report to you. Here we are in Washington. Who knows where we're going to be on Monday? You got a pretty good idea of where. But thank you very much for listening, and pray for the people of Israel, and pray for the people of the Ukraine and the people of Iran, who we just spoke about. Pray for the people of Vietnam and those who border China, all of whom are at risk from the most murderous country on earth. And of course, pray for us, the people of America. God bless America. We'll see you next week at 7 on Lindell TV, and then at 8 o'clock on America's Mayor Live. And who knows, we may see you over the weekend. God bless America.
I'm back in the New York groove. I'm back in the New York groove. I'm back in the New York groove. Back in the New York groove. In the New York groove. I'm back in the New York groove. I'm back in the New York groove.
It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze,